Shortly before 7 in the evening on November 9, 1989, Günter Schabowski read a new travel regulation on live television. Asked when it took effect, he indicated it was immediate. The border force had not received an operational order to open. Within hours, a reform intended to remain controlled became a public promise that thousands of East Berliners carried to the wall. The East Germans were leaving through Hungary and Czechoslovakia, while demonstrations demanded political change at home. The government faced a legitimacy crisis, not merely a paperwork problem. Travel restrictions had become a visible test of whether the ruling party could still command obedience after months of emigration and peaceful protest. Erich Honecker was replaced by Egon Krenz, yet the leadership's attempt to regain control did not stop public pressure. Officials prepared revised travel rules as a concession. The draft was not written as an instruction to dismantle the border that evening. Applications and administrative procedures were supposed to preserve control. Officials completed a travel regulation allowing citizens to apply for permanent departure and private trips. Its implementation was meant to begin after border and passport authorities could prepare. The document moved through the political leadership late in the day, leaving little time for agencies at the wall to receive clear, consistent guidance. Schabowski was given the new text before his regular international press conference. He had not participated in the drafting and did not receive a full operational briefing. That gap mattered because a live question would force him to translate administrative language into a public answer before the border system was ready. Television cameras carried the briefing live. Much of it sounded routine. Near the end, a journalist asked about travel. Schabowski searched his papers, read the regulation, and presented it as a decision already made. The authority of the setting made an uncertain explanation sound like immediate state policy. Asked when the rule became effective, Schabowski consulted the note and answered that, to his knowledge, it applied immediately and without delay. The film paraphrases rather than dramatizes the exchange. What matters is the consequence. Viewers heard permission now, while guards still had instructions written for the old border. West German broadcasters reported that East Germany was opening its border. The message spread faster than the GDR chain of command could correct or operationalize it. People did not need social media. Live television, radio, and telephone calls created a shared expectation across Berlin within an hour. East Berliners began arriving at Bornholmer Strasse and other crossings. They cited the televised statement. Border personnel checked with superiors but received no order matching what the public had heard. Each call delayed a decision while the crowd outside grew and the claim of immediate travel became harder to reverse without force. More people reached the checkpoints after evening news reports. Some expected to cross and return, others carried little because the announcement sounded like a right, not a one-way emigration procedure. Guards faced a contradiction between standing restrictions and a senior official's public words. No central authority supplied a workable bridge between them. At Bornholmer Strasse, some travelers were allowed out under a procedure that could invalidate their documents and prevent return. The measure was meant to reduce the crowd, but people outside could see movement through the checkpoint. Limited passage therefore strengthened the belief that the border was opening and drew more pressure toward the barriers. The crowd reached thousands. Cars, pedestrians, and television crews compressed around the crossing. Senior officers continued calling for direction. The danger was no longer abstract. Attempting to force everyone back could trigger panic or violence, while allowing unrestricted passage would abandon the border regime without authorization. Late television reports described the border as open. Across the city, more citizens moved toward crossings. A correction would now have to overcome what people had heard, what some had seen, and what foreign media were already broadcasting. The state still possessed weapons and barriers, but its public message had fractured the obedience required to use them coherently. Harold Yeager and his personnel had no satisfactory order and a crowd that could not safely be managed by the existing procedure. Later accounts differ in emphasis, but the operational fact is clear. The local checkpoint moved toward opening without a formal command to dismantle the border. Human restraint inside a failed command system prevented the contradiction from becoming bloodshed. The checkpoint opened and people crossed freely into West Berlin. The moment was celebratory, but it was also the result of accumulated administrative failure. A regulation, an unprepared spokesman, rapid news, absent orders, and local officers refusing to escalate against the crowd. The wall remained physically present while its operating logic collapsed. Once Bornholmer Strasse opened, pressure intensified elsewhere. Checkpoints followed. East and West Berliners crossed, embraced, and climbed onto the wall near the Brandenburg Gate. Contemporary accounts capture disbelief as much as triumph. Many people still feared the border might close again or that they would not be allowed home. West Berliners moved east as East Berliners moved west. Traffic overwhelmed the old control pattern. Guards who had been trained to regulate a hard frontier now watched people pass in both directions. The regime had not formally vanished, but the border's credibility could not be restored after the public had crossed it together. Authorities regularized travel after the fact. New crossing points and administrative measures followed. The opening accelerated a political process already driven by protest and emigration. It did not by itself complete German reunification, which came in October 1990. The night changed what was possible because the border ceased to function as an unquestioned instrument of state power. The wall opened through more than one verbal mistake. Schabowski's answer created an immediate public promise, broadcasters amplified it, citizens acted on it, and guards confronted a choice that the leadership had failed to resolve. The decisive reversal was non-violent. Thousands demanded that the announced rule be real, and the people holding the barrier chose not to preserve it by force. That restraint did not complete the political story that night. East Germany still existed. Border procedures had to be regularized, and reunification required elections, negotiations between the two German states, and agreement with the four Allied powers. October 1990 was almost 11 months away. What changed immediately was the regime's ability to enforce the border as before. Once the gates opened before cameras and crowds, the old claim of control could not be restored.